Well, good afternoon. Let me begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are meeting, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend those respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us here today. Thank you to ASPI for convening this important discussion. As countries seek to move towards a digital economy, dependence on critical digital infrastructure continues to increase. And we're seeing new technologies entering markets and providing solutions to improve our digital connectivity. From submarine cables to cloud-based data storage solutions, through to the promise of regional connectivity from low Earth orbit satellites. Increasing adoption of these technologies will ensure that countries are digitally connected and increase their economic prosperity. However, this adoption also introduces significant vulnerabilities, underscoring the importance of trusted, secure and resilient technologies to ensure the continued prosperity of the region. It's also important that policies and regulations keep up with the pace of technological development to ensure that citizens can use these technologies in a safe and secure way. The Australian Government is actively seeking to promote secure, resilient and reliable connectivity and cybersecurity across the Indo-Pacific. And this includes our sustained investments in telecommunications infrastructure, including subsea cables, through the Australian Infrastructure Financing Facility for the Pacific, working closely with our trusted industry partners. We've recently announced new initiatives like the Cable Connectivity and Resilience Centre, focused on shaping the policy and regulatory environment as a key Australian contribution to the Quad Partnership on Cable Connectivity and Resilience. We've also provided direct support to Southeast Asian and Pacific partner nations to build cybersecurity resilience and capacity. And we've signed a Memorandum of Understanding and strategic partnership agreements on cyber and critical technology with a number of partner countries, including Indonesia, Malaysia, and India. In today's conversation, I am keen to explore how we maximise the opportunity presented by adopting new technologies in the Indo-Pacific whilst mitigating the vulnerabilities introduced by those technologies and what effective public-private partnerships could look like. So I look forward to engaging with the discussion with our esteemed panellists. Lord Fakafanua, the Speaker of the Parliament of Kingdom of Tonga, Mihoko Matsubara, the Chief Cybersecurity Strategist for NTT Corporation, and Shigehiro Tanaka, the Corporate Senior Executive Vice President of NEC. So I would now invite our panellists to offer some introductory remarks.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to observe all protocols, and from the outset, very grateful to attend my first Sydney Dialogue, and of course, it's a pleasure to be here amongst distinguished colleagues. Kingdom of Tonga, if you're unaware, is an island in the middle of the Pacific, a small island developing state, and we find ourselves in the midst of geopolitical tug of war that is happening, and we've heard quite extensively about today. That in the Pacific is the elephant in the room. But amongst that, our security priority is based on the threat of climate change, and evidently, since 2019, our undersea submarine cable has been disconnected 4 times. In fact, there was a substantial earthquake that occurred on the first day of the Pacific Island Forum meeting on last Monday. 3 consecutive, very powerful earthquakes disconnected our domestic submarine cable. 8 days since it was newly repaired from our last earthquake in late June. So that just highlights how vulnerable we are. On the day, on last Monday, on the first day of the Pacific Island Forum, we also had a flash flood. So that just highlights the vulnerabilities and the need to look at technologies to overcome some of these communications issues. And recently, at the end of July, our government granted a broad spectrum license, 6 months, for Starlink, who are now offering services across the Pacific. Later on, if I get the chance, I'll talk about the regulatory issues that we are facing with low orbiting satellites. But in terms of the struggles and challenges that small island developing states are facing, connectivity is important since we are now more interconnected, more interdependent than ever. So I'm very happy to be here to talk about subsea cables and also satellites, as it's very relevant to the development and economic performance of small island developing states such as Tonga.
Very good.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be back to Sydney Dialogue again this year. And I think it's really important to talk about security and resilience, not only at the hardware and cable level, but also at software and cybersecurity level. And I think Sydney Dialogue is a perfect platform to be held here in Australia, because as Minister Watts eloquently stated, and Australia has been really leading various initiatives to contribute to the Indo-Pacific resilience for subsea cables, but also cybersecurity and also capacity building in ASEAN and other parts of the Indo-Pacific. And because now I'm very delighted to share the stage with esteemed panelists to share different perspectives from industry, but also from the government, because public-private partnerships is indispensable to achieve these goals. So I really look forward to the questions.
Well, thank you. This is my first time to be here, and I thank ASPI for inviting me. And also, I would like to thank Australia and the Australian government for the support that they have given us. It's interesting that this connectivity issue is now even taken up very often at the leaders' meeting. For example, in April, we had a meeting between Prime Minister Kishida and also President Biden, in which NECs and also our effort in undersea cable was taken up specifically in the leader's statement, which we do work closely with the Google company. So these things are now just such an important matter in the economic, the security field. And at the same time, I would have to say that since we are providing the infrastructure, the communication-related public infrastructure through our technology and telecommunication in space or in defense-related areas, we are proud to be part of this trusted network that is needed in this region, and we are continue to be committed to this, to achieving this. But there are so many challenges which I hope we could talk with this great panel members. So I look forward to this panel meetings. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I must admit, I was reflecting before today's panel session that 20 years ago, as a baby telecommunications lawyer, I worked on a number of subsea cable matters, and they were far less high profile than the issue is today. I don't think I ever expected to be on a panel discussing this at a forum like this. But let's throw to some topics of conversation. Lord Fakafanua, can we start with you? How can we best support the development of secure, transparent and economically viable telecommunications infrastructure across the Indo-Pacific? What role should industry and governments each play in ensuring and enabling secure and resilient connectivity?
Thank you, and I think it's important to build the context around those who are at the edge of the service, so to speak. So for small island developing states like Tonga, we are not only blessed with the blue Pacific Ocean that has potential for tourism, but in terms of the economy, we are very distant from markets. We're distant from markets, we are distant from central services, and in that context, it's really important that we have resiliency built into our communications infrastructure. And as I've introduced this morning, 4 times we had disruptions. And I think it's hard to elaborate what I'm talking about, because you're always connected here. You have 5 nines, so downtime of 5 minutes a year, you don't feel. But in Tonga, when we first got disconnected by an unknown cause some years ago in 2019, internet was down, Facebook was down. We had no banking. So our central banking services was on a phone, a satellite phone, executing transactions. So you can imagine everything was slowed down to a very slow pace to pre-internet days. And to give you an example of the lack of resiliency in terms of recovering from a break in the undersea cable, our domestic cable took 1.5 years to be repaired. And when you think about how does this get financed, there is no insurance for broken cables. So depending on how much leeway you have, your contracts with the providers, there are ships that go around monitoring broken cables that you have in retainer. It comes down to how bad the damage is, and for some of us, some of the damages that we've seen, up to 90 kilometers of cable, we don't have on short supply. So that has to be a special order from the manufacturers. And given that we are reliant on one cable, it means that other forms of connectivity is essential for the survival of our telecommunications. And I have to thank the Australian government, and also in collaboration with the New Zealand government. In the pipeline, there were talks of a new project to install a second cable. But when you look at a population of 100,000 people, the economic viability is going to be a challenge, given that we will essentially have two submarine cables servicing 100,000 people. But the importance of having this, it's almost like a human right to have connectivity these days, is something that you would have to sell by my constituents. Undersea cables are important, and I think having redundancy in terms of satellite connectivity is also something that we want to prioritize in the future. So that investment resilience is important and a priority for us.
It's an interesting point you make about bringing this home to an Australian audience that can feel connected all the time. But there was an incident in Australia where Tasmania, one of our island nations, their connectivity was cut off as well. So perhaps the Tasmanians in the audience could sympathise somewhat with that. Ms. Matsubara.
Sure. Thank you so much. So because this year the Sydney Dialogue talks about cybersecurity, emerging technology, including AI, and also climate changes. So I'd like to talk about ION, or Innovative Optical and Wireless Network. So ION Global Forum currently consists of almost 150 global leading companies, including NEC, and also NVIDIA, Microsoft, and other companies from South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and other parts of Asia, and also United States and Europe, from food, chemicals, manufacturing, auto manufacturing, semiconductors, and also telecommunication companies. Why? Because we have lots of problems with cyberspace. Cyberspace has created lots of convenience, but also lots of cyber threats and vulnerabilities. And as we already learned about, AI powers already led to a huge amount of power consumptions, and we are also facing acute climate change. So we need to do something about it to be more eco-friendly. So that is why the ION Global Forum's members are now aiming to decrease the power consumptions by adopting IONs, the end-to-end cutting-edge, end-to-end all photonics-based network. So decrease the power consumption by 200 times, and also increase power transmission capacity by 125 times, and also to reduce latency by 200 times by 2030. And they already started to make some of the ION services this year. And the good news is that last Friday, actually ION made another great milestone between Japan and Taiwan. So we already activated all photonics network, or APN, between Japan and Taiwan, specifically between NTT and Chunghwa Telecoms. And they already demonstrated no jitter and no latency network. And it will be very convenient because now this region is facing more frequent natural disasters and also facing geopolitical tensions. So if we have a good network between the two countries, it will be very convenient to do data backup. So that is why I'd like to talk about the ION Global Forum, because this is also supported by different countries and also different industries. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tanaka, how can we support the development of secure, transparent, economically viable telecommunications infrastructure, and what other roles that industry and government can play in this?
Well, thank you very much. Clearly, this connectivity industry involves a huge number of stakeholders, from governments to players, not only the traditional telecom players, but also the big tech that's coming into this market, and also the consumers in several countries, developed and developing, and also the financial sector, the investors. All sorts of interests are related here. And in terms of players, the fact that the big tech is playing a bigger role clearly has an impact on how these technology will be rolled out. And I don't think we have yet the real grasp of what kind of effect this will have and how we can really cope with the situation. Also in terms of technology, as has been explained, optical technology like ION is going to be one of the key. But there are also other technologies, which is good because we need a lot of diverse options. We don't know which technology exactly will succeed, and it's very important that we have all sorts of technology options. At the same time, it's very important that we understand that having a technology is quite different from actually deploying it. For example, in the 5G situation, we know that the 5G rollout has not been as quick as some has expected them to be, and there are several reasons for that. But that also, constitutes trouble for business, because business runs on the expectation that certain technologies will be used or will be demanded, will get enough demand. But if that's not the case, well, that will affect the way the industry is doing business. And in that regard, for example, I take note of the fact that ASN, the European company, which is also active in subsea, cable industry, was just being acquired by the French government. This also shows, how changing the atmosphere or the environment surrounding our business is. There's no easy solution, but it's clear that the public and the private sector have to work together. But probably just talking with each other is not enough. We shouldn't be complacent, and we should really think deeply about how things can be developed in a way that will fit our goal of achieving a trusted network among the countries that share these basic values.
I'll just start drilling into that a little bit more. I would be interested in your perspective on this, Lord Fakafanua. How can Indo-Pacific governments, but especially Pacific Islands countries, protect their investment in connectivity, e.g. their local telecoms, without limiting access to the fastest, most secure internet products, like, for example, external providers, like you mentioned, Starlink?
I don't want to seem like my comments will stifle investment, because we welcome foreign investment. However, one of the issues that underlie our government's hesitancy in accepting Starlink with open arms is the fact that they are beyond our sovereign jurisdiction in terms of regulation. So when we talk about landing a fiber optic cable in our shores and with the domestic cable, all the traffic that goes in and out can be regulated and is within the ambit of regulation under our laws. When you have a vendor such as Starlink who bypasses all of that, and provides satellite kits to private citizens to connect directly, bypassing regulation or the laws in our government and in our sovereign jurisdiction. That gives a lot of countries in the Pacific cause for concern. And so with great hesitancy, the Tonga government granted a 6-month temporary broad spectrum license to Starlink because there was a big outcry from the public for connectivity. And given the fact that Starlink at the moment is very competitive and that the satellite itself is very cheap to buy, the hardware and also the subscription is relatively cheap, but only because we haven't secured cheap and reliable domestic cable connectivity. So until we've secured that, probably when the second cable lands, satellite becomes the most viable option commercially. However, regulation-wise, there is pause for concern from the government's perspective. And Tonga's not alone. I believe, I cannot speak for Samoa, but they have the same hesitancy. And Fiji has overcome that by having the stations, the satellite stations land in Fiji, so they have the ground stations there. I also have to mention that foreign investment from key partners in the region are also essential. Australia, through Telstra, has invested in Digicel, which is the second terrestrial provider, alongside Tonga Telecommunications, which is the national carrier. And Digicel has invested immensely in the upgrade of their terrestrial networks. There are about 30 new cell sites that have been installed in the past year, and they're also looking forward towards rolling out 5G in Tonga. So these kind of investments and partnerships with local telecommunications companies are essential to the development of telecommunications in terms of security and supply and reliability for our people in the islands.
Mm-hmm. Okay. An industry-focused question for Ms. Matsubara and Mr. Tanaka. What does industry need from governments to maximise delivery of effective digital and telecommunications infrastructure in the Indo-Pacific?
Sure. So because NTT started out as a telecommunication company, well, we expanded our business to other areas these days, but because our original DNA is about telecommunications, digital connectivity or connectivity in general is really close to my heart. And when we think about connectivity, we have to think about not only resilience, but also we have to think about how can we make sure to continue our telecommunication services no matter what, 24/7. Because it can be disrupted by various reasons. I think we're going to talk about more later. But one is natural disaster or climate change, for example. So how quickly we can deploy that new backup to the affected areas. And the new technologies or platforms we are currently looking at is and HAPS, high altitude platform satellite. So you already talked about LOE and also the Starlink. So the HAPS remains aloft, lower than the satellites. It stays aloft between 17 and 22 kilometers below satellites. So it means that because satellites are up here and HAPS is down here, so it means that the coverage is wider and bigger, and also the cost to data link is lower because it's closer to the ground. And also the biggest difference between HAPS and a lower orbit satellite is that HAPS doesn't require specified antennas. So you can actually be connected to your mobile phone services. And because you don't need any antennas to talk to your mobile phones, so you don't have to deploy antennas or dishes to disaster affected areas. So it's really convenient because if you're in a crisis, you have to talk to the people in need immediately. But now, as telecommunication perspective, you also have to embed security into the mobile or landline services. So that is why you have to do cybersecurity capacity building. So during the break, we talked about how important it is to deploy cyber hygiene to everybody because it's so underestimated. So to do, but it also takes time and resources to do that. So that is why we have to think our ways to multiply the effect of capacity building. What we, NTT, is doing is a train of trainers of cybersecurity. So for example, NTT provided cybersecurity training for Vietnam CERT. And then Vietnam CERT officials actually did the same cybersecurity training to different critical infrastructure sectors in Vietnam. So that we can multiply the same training to create a domino effect.
Well, when we talk about what we would like to expect the government to do in order to support this industry, I think the first and most important part is that we hope the governments will keep a continuous and a sort of sustainable interest in this matter rather than in one-shot interest because this is something that will just be with us for a very long time. And also, since we are living in this geopolitical age, we are also immersed in several risks coming from several parts of the world. And here we need a very close support from the governments in coping with this situation. And also a very realistic understanding of what these things mean to our industry. And also, we need a lot of cooperation among even the like-minded countries. But it's also the case that there's some divergence in interests between countries, which is of course natural. But we hope that there'll be a more kind of a common thinking of what can we do best among the like-minded by sharing the responsibilities, sharing the benefits, because it's going to be a very long kind of competition with the other side, which there's not going to be easy win with just one country doing everything, or that's not an option at all for us. Just thinking about the supply chain risk, the supply chain has just gone so global. We're not just getting back everything in each country anymore, and we have to live with some sort of the supply chain myriad networks, and how we can create that will take a long time, but again a very focused and also a sense of really sharing our benefits and responsibility in a way that is could be accommodative for any countries that are ready to join this initiative. So there's so many things that we would like to ask the government to do.
I hear that all the time. Lord Fakafanua, how can we build capacity across the Indo-Pacific to ensure that no one is left behind, particularly in the Pacific Islands, as digital connectivity expands and new technologies emerge? In particular, I'm thinking here of in what specific areas can Australia, for example, support Indo-Pacific nations to bridge any gaps in digital connectivity to access new technologies, AIs, etc., e-safety, institutional interventions that are necessitated by that connectivity?
I think specifically in the context of Tonga, which I can speak to, there is a lack of human resource capacity. In terms of our CERT department, I can safely say there's less than a handful of them in that whole department. So when you think about how important it is that we look at cybersecurity and cyber safety, some of the low-hanging fruits would be purely education. So ensuring that people are practicing good cyber hygiene, following the 10 steps to cyber hygiene, will prevent about 90% of the cyber incursions and secure their government and also private networks. So that alongside the ever-looming challenge of under infrastructure in the islands. The Australia Infrastructure Investment Bank, which at the moment is flush with money, but because of various reasons isn't deploying it across the Pacific as we have been wanting or needing. So there are some systemic issues there that need to be tweaked, and underlying that, I think capacity building our human resources, both from an institutional level, strengthening departments such as CERT, as well as ensuring that our infrastructures are hardened. The Government of Australia and New Zealand are jointly working together with the Tongan government in deploying a second submarine cable. That is one good example of how we can harden our existing infrastructure. At the same time, explore new technologies and new ways that can allow islands to leapfrog technological advancements. Given our low regulatory framework and our low population, it should be easy to overcome some of these obstacles. Mm-hmm. However, sometimes I'm the youngest member of parliament, so as a legislator, it's very frustrating for me, and I hope they don't hear, to talk about what's in the horizon and the potential to harness the advances that are coming from artificial intelligence and large language models, and what the potential is for the future. Because given the fact that we are now interconnected, there's nothing stopping small island developing states overcoming that distance that I was talking about, distance to market, distance to services through connectivity. We can have training on artificial intelligence, trainers of trainers. We can have these programs deployed in our schools in Tonga. We can have 100% access through satellite technology and what you were talking about. Is it HARP?
HUBs.
HUBs in our outer islands, so that some of these services and benefits in terms of technological transformations reaches everyone, and that is the aspiration that we have, is to connect everyone so no one's left behind, and then give them the ability to teach themselves so that they can become programmers of programmers, so they can become involved in this revolution that artificial intelligence is presenting. So in terms of what support we can receive from countries such as Australia and developed countries like Indonesia, Japan, others who have a Silicon Valley of their own, there's nothing stopping that aspiration, that dream from happening in the islands such as Tonga.
I have to sympathise with you, Lord Fakafanua. I was once the youngest member of our caucus as well, and it could be frustrating trying to share the technological vision and the pace of change with more senior colleagues, but on the other hand, at least you always got a good networking opportunity when you're doing tech support for a senior colleague's mobile phone. I won't ask you to comment on that. Ms. Matsubara and Mr. Tanaka, what are the roles of public-private partnerships in bridging this digital divide, not just at the infrastructure level, but at that societal level that we've been talking about here?
Sure. So I'd like to talk about the regional challenge we are facing, small and medium-sized companies. So I am sure that, because in each one of your countries facing, I think that over 90% of the companies in your country are small and medium-sized companies, and they consist like a real important part of supply chain. However, everybody is saying that because they don't have enough resources, enough people or money, they just cannot invest in cybersecurity. And we haven't seen any improvement over the last few years. So, I see some silver lining in Japan, because I see a really good harmonization between the Japanese government and also Japanese industry. So for example, Japanese Ministry of Economy and Trade and Industry, MEDI, has been collaborating with Japanese industry and also some Chamber of Commerce in rural areas. So for example, the Japanese government are also working with insurance companies, because insurance companies now have cyber insurance services, and also they work with IT companies and telecommunication companies to provide really reasonably priced cybersecurity services, even purchasable for small and medium-sized companies to provide cybersecurity solutions, but also to provide an incident response if they see anything suspicious in their network. So that is another one area that you can do at the national level. And at the local level, so some of the Japanese prefecture administrations provide subsidiaries if the small and medium-sized companies want to invest in cybersecurity. And because Tokyo has lots of budget, so they actually came up with a really very Japanese ideas to visualize cyber threats. So one of the major reasons why the small and medium-sized companies say that, well, we don't have money, we just cannot invest in cybersecurity is because that they just cannot visualize what kind of threats they are facing. Or ransomware attacks, and you can visualize because you see the blackmail on your screen. But otherwise, even if you say that there's an information leak by a cyber attack, you don't see like a dripping water. It's not like a water leak. So, and if you then say that, your intellectual property is stolen, it's nothing like that your jewelry is missing from your room. So that is why then if you use manga or cartoon, you have to visualize what kind of cyber attacks that another cyber attack can do to your small and medium-sized companies. And also you have to visualize what kind of facial expressions they face in their damages, and also but you also have to provide solutions not only to give just horror stories, because horror stories just give you stress. Well, we face that on a daily basis, especially in business. But you have to provide solutions because otherwise we see no way out. So that is why that I appreciate that the Tokyo Metro government has been publishing the manga series. One manga series is about one specific type of cyber attack, like phishing attack or business email compromise or ransomware attacks, so that small and medium-sized companies understand what kind of reasonably priced cybersecurity measures they can take.
Well, when we were talking about traditional or old-type technologies, I think there was a dichotomy of developed markets and developing markets, in which I think there were some distinctions of what goes on in the developed markets. But now I think with this advent of this enormous speed-moving technology in this digital sector area, I think many things are becoming simultaneously happening throughout the world. In AI, for example, NEC has developed its own generative AI LLM of its own, and we have already started to deploy them. But the kind of issues that we face is probably not much different from what happens in the US or other big markets, and also in the developing world as well. And I think in that regard, what we are experiencing within our domestic market is something that we can easily, transfer to the others and also think together. And the Japanese government, for now, is making an enormous effort to help out and reach out to the global South countries, which also includes a lot of important countries in this Indo-Pacific region. And coincided with that, we hope that several technologies in the digital field, not only limited to 5G or that type of communication things, and also to AI use and everything, will be on board. And we also thank the continuous support that Australia is giving to several countries in this region, and also the United States efforts, and also jumping into things that are happening here. So I'm very much comfortable with the fact that there's an alignment of goal. Again, just repeating my point, is how continuous these efforts can be made, and how that will also fit into the reality that the business is facing. Because to be honest, we also know that market forces alone will not bring everything. There's so many gaps between what we want to achieve and what is achievable in the market. And the role of filling the gap falls pretty much on the government side, which is again is always a challenge in having a sustained kind of support on any specific issue. And the issue is growing as year goes by, and as the technology gets more complicated and the geopolitical tension and risk grows. But we hope that this focus will not change, and that all the like-minded governments will just keep on, working together and sharing the responsibility and achieve and to quickly achieve what we would like to in the very near future.
In the last 10 minutes we have, I'm just interested in the implications of success here. We've heard from a lot of Pacific Islands nations about their ambitions to drive greater connectivity, resilience, redundancy, bandwidth. But of course, as we succeed in that, the attack surface for these countries grows, new threats to resilience emerges. I'm interested in what the panelists' perspectives are about what the biggest societal disruption that might accompany this increased connectivity would be. What are the biggest threats and risks that we need to manage as a result of success on connectivity over the next 10 years, over the next 20 years? Lord Fakafanua?
Okay. Just want to mention that success for us is reaching everyone in the islands. So in terms of connectivity, just like the ITU's mandate, it is to ensure that everyone is connected. Now, in terms of regulating that connectivity and ensuring quality of connection, the challenges lie on our infrastructure, it lies on financing, it lies on technical partners. And I think it's incumbent on the industry to ensure that that is maintained for those of us who are not as connected in the islands. I would believe that in education, we're working with the most vulnerable. In Tonga, we have a non-government organization called Women in ICT, WICT. They're ensuring that those who don't have regular connectivity, especially those who are marginalized, have that service. But I believe that good safety, cybersecurity safety, in terms of cybersecurity and enhancing their awareness of cyber attacks such as phishing. I'm not immune to it. My mother was almost part of this pyramid scheme. I know many people, members of parliament, who have succumbed to the Nigerian prince, emails. It's embarrassing. And certain staffs in my ministry in the parliament have almost fell victim to these phishing schemes. So I think in terms of protecting our population, we need to ensure that they have good cyber safety and education around how to use your phone and not answer any miscellaneous emails that are purporting to give you money from your long-lost uncle in Nigeria or wherever. I think some of it sounds like common sense, but as a legislator, we need to protect our people from that, because we see that it is a major problem, not just in first world countries, but also in developing nations like Tonga.
Look, let me just reiterate that from the Australian perspective. When we hold, and this is a common experience from members of parliament across Australia, when you hold the forums with your communities about scams and about these online scams, they're some of the most moving ones you have with your community, because people come and share their stories, and it's really clear that this isn't just something that happens to the gullible. It can happen to people that are very successful in multiple different spheres of life, and when you hear those stories about their retirement savings or their house deposit being stolen by a cyber criminal on the other side of the world, it's quite emotional, it's quite affecting. Ms. Matsubara.
Sure. So from a telecommunication company perspective, again, we are always responsible to keep providing telecommunication services to everybody, no matter what. And it can be disrupted. Well, usual causes are like system malfunctions. It will always happen, unfortunately, in the future. And cyber attacks getting harder and harder thanks to generative AI and artificial intelligence and deepfake So that is why we have to empower our defenders with also AI. And also that another cause can be natural disasters. And it's getting more frequent in this region, unfortunately. And another upcoming bigger cause maybe is geopolitical tensions in the South China Sea and also in the Taiwan Strait. So that is why, because the threat landscape is becoming bigger and also more complicated than ever. So that is why even though the public-private partnerships have been really crucial, but it will become even more crucial in the future because now the telecommunication companies or IT companies have a lot of knowledge in technologies, but now the problem is bigger, covering not only economic security, but also national security. So I really appreciate your perspective and the insights and the lessons learned, and I really look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Mr. Tanaka.
Well, thank you. Well, clearly, we are heading for a real need of a trusted, reliable, and resilient network throughout the region. The cost of failing to do so is just enormous, as has been already explained. It will risk our democracy, and it could be risking all our business and everything. At the same time, the kind of risk we are facing, either it be physical or either it be coming from any disasters, it's extremely difficult to cope. It's about how we change the real world, how we really achieve a real kind of investment, a material kind of investment in a short period of time, which are the kind of challenges that no government has seriously tackled up until now. And these challenges are not just coming at the forefront as we live now, and how quickly we can respond to them is a big challenge. And in that regard, I think we should really avoid the risk of achieving a sort of a suboptimal, optimal, or partial optimization as opposed to a holistic optimization, if I may use that term, because in the end, every player has to be in a situation where they can sustainably continue their activities, and by just focusing on one aspect, more often than not, sort of lose sight of the whole entire picture. And that's the kind of mistake that we have done in the past. We thought everything was okay, only to just to discover that the supply chain was not at all, in a trusted, it was not prepared in a trusted manner. But these things just only happen in a very long time, and we really need, a long time perspective and make sure that these we see things in the real big and holistic optimization way of thinking. That's probably the biggest challenge, but only the essential way to cope with what we are facing, and also achieving the most highest level of goal of achieving a trusted network in this region.
Well, as a former telco executive and a current parliamentarian, I've really enjoyed this panel, traversing both of those spheres. But let me just hand over to Lord Fakafanua to finish the session today, just with 1 minute on democracy.
As Speaker of Parliament, I have a responsibility to talk about democracy. I know this is about subsea cables and sky, but the impact of artificial intelligence has been seen in Tonga. In fact, we had a session of Parliament that within the next half hour, a member of Parliament's speech was altered and was spread across social media. It happened almost immediately, and it was alleged that he swore in Parliament, but all of us who were there during the debate never heard it. And when you listen to the audio that was augmented, it must have been through generative AI or whatever tools they have at their fingertips. This shows that even remote island countries are not immune from the effects of artificial intelligence. And our democracies are under threat. And so it's important as legislators that we look at how do we safeguard our democracy, especially after the discussion this morning about trust being an important element of democracy. So I just want to state that. while I'm on stage. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. And we all need to grapple with these challenges together in Australia, in the region, around the world. So thank you for participating in the discussion here today. And I invite the audience to thank our panellists.